Well, good morning, guys. Good morning. And I want to welcome you to Sing With Me. I am Shonda, and I inspire nations to grow. So, for those of you who always turn it on, you know I love you. And for those of you who may be new to this channel, I want to welcome you to the Sing Life community because we do believe in the law of attraction. So, namaste all the way. Inspiration, motivation, spirituality, and of course, God, because we learn lessons here and we only reflect good. So, I want to welcome you to Sing Life TV with me today. And I want to welcome everyone to Freestyle Friday. Well, listen, it's no surprise that we are in the midst of a crisis. We're in the midst of something that none of us have ever experienced in a lifetime. But I truly believe that, everyone was talking about the year of a perfect 2020 vision. And if you know anything about vision, like when you go to the doctor's office, when they're prescribing a prescription for you, either for contact lenses or eyeglasses, they kind of put your head in this device and they begin to click the different lenses until it's clear. And I think that God is doing a spiritual clearing, a spiritual purging, a spiritual cleaning things out. You have to be careful for what you wish for because you just might get it. But when it shows up, it may not be in the frame or it may not be in the form or in the atmosphere of what you thought it would be. So everybody was talking about a 2020 vision. And now we're surrounded by all this dust and the smoke in this pandemic, and we're experiencing things that we never thought that we would experience before. So when I thought about what I wanted to just tap on in and talk to you guys about on this Freestyle Friday, I want to go over to Matthew 17, verses 1 through 10. Now, in the text, this is the time when Jesus was getting ready to be transformed in the midst of the disciples. And so I wanted to turn over to the transformation or transfiguration of Jesus. And I'm going to find it in my Bible for those of you who have one. If not, you can listen and you can always kind of pull it up online if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and just read what it says. And it says that after chapter 17, it says, after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before him, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Peter, said to Jesus. And then Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And while he was still speaking, a bright cloud enveloped them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. And when the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them. Get up, he said. Don't be afraid. And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. They saw the glory when the vision was blurred with the clouds surrounding them, and they were terrified. And it's almost like that we're in a situation where we are surrounded by smoke and mirrors. This cloudy situation, a pandemic. It's cloudy. But everyone January 1st was talking about 2020 vision. But sometimes God will allow things to work in the elements to restructure things and to realign them with the original plan that he had in place from the beginning. So just like this word, if you find yourself on your face, overwhelmed in the midst of a hazy type of a situation and you're terrified, just know that you can get up. And after all of it is said and done, you will arise from the situation, from a dead situation to a new life. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about this, that you may be terrified, but when the dust settles, you will arise from the dead. You know, it's interesting because sometimes in order to follow me, you have to have a relationship with a supernatural God, like the one that created everything. And as God began to reveal me to me, the higher version of me, who he had in mind, when he allowed me to enter into this form, into this dimension, I began to spin. And as I began to spin, things was chaotic. It was unclear. And as I began to unfold, I began to change. My spirit changed. My terminology, it changed. The way that I communicated changed. And before I knew it, I kind of reflected things and spoke metaphorically. So sometimes, in order to get things on a whole nother dimension, you have to align with that spirit and that frequency. I got like a massive download. I have not been on here in a few weeks, primarily because it's been so chaotic with work and the demands with it, and of course the responsibilities at home. But God just kept on moving. So I want you to know that if you're a traditional type of person, this may not work for you. You know what I'm going to talk about today. If you're highly religious, then I'll go ahead and give you extend the invitation to click on another channel. Because just like the one who sent me, I don't really fit into a box. And I can't be conformed with the hand grip of any type of religion. But yet I do sit back and I study everything, including the different things, so that I can be able to be more effective in the earth. And it's so ironic to me that Christ didn't fit in the hand grip of anything either, but yet he disappeared off the scene for a while to learn the ways of those that would later persecute him, accuse him of all sorts of things, and crucify him. So it's no surprise to me at first when I began to unfold and I was wrestling and I was terrified and there was dust all around me. I didn't fit in. But as I began to examine scriptures and as I began to unfold, I began to reflect the one who sent me. He didn't fit in either. So I wanted to just encourage you today, whoever you may be, who may feel that your life is falling apart, who may feel sad, who may feel down. I just want you to know that when this dust settles, you will be a different human being. So I want to talk a little bit about how things began to kind of get ready or prepare us for what we're in on today. A few years ago, it was like an eclipse to take place here. Everybody bought glasses and everybody could see it. But it was a different experience for me. And I actually heard God say, "It is done." And I'm looking like, what? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's pitch black. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's pitch black. I'm cold just for a hot second because it went from sun to nothing. And then I look up to see your glory. And then you say to me, "It's done." And it's almost like spiritually, I saw a scroll being rolled up in the heavens and a new scroll extended. And from that point after, it was wars and rumors of wars, and it was chaos, and it was turbulent weather, tornadoes, hurricanes, just all type of things began to shift to get the earth back into alignment for this 2020 vision that you all affirmed through your mouth. And so the elements is obeying in the form of this pandemic. It's a 2020 vision. See, because what I understand is that sometimes God had to allow things to get completely out of control to get our attention. Because we want to go about our lives and we have our own goals and we feel somehow, some way that we can be separate from the hand of God to accomplish the goals. And I talk about goals on this channel, but let me be clear with you. It's no way that you can co-create a thing without being in alignment with the one who created all the things that flows into your experience. And as I began to reflect and I think about the different conversations that I would have prior to this whole corona pandemic, I would hear people talk about time, how they didn't have enough time, how people talked about They didn't have enough time with their children. They get up early and, you stay at work late and you just press for all of this time. You really didn't really care for your job. I mean, you went in there primarily because it provided for you, but you didn't really care about the people that was on your job. You never really had enough time. And then we got those that were good time managers, but got out of the alignment with God, so conceited and so self-righteous to where everything was about social media. Everything was about the selfie. Everything was about TikTok. Everything was about, how do I look? Am I resembling a celebrity? Am I social enough? And all of these things became idols. They became gods in the minds of the people. And things began to get completely out of hand. So when things get out of hand, when the Lord cares about you, he will allow things to happen in your environment to get you redirected and to steer you back in alignment for the 2020 vision that you were all proclaiming, that you was all about it. But then when the elements show up for you to be about it, then you want to look scared and you want to be fearful. Honey, it ain't nothing new under the sun that is happening today that hadn't happened if you examine your scriptures. It's nothing going on for those of us who know the word, for those of us who walk in the spirit. We understand every day that we're wrestling from time to time. We understand what spiritual warfare looks like. That's why we're not moved, and that's why we're not shook by what's going on. Actually, we are excited about what's going on because we realize that God is redirecting, he's steering, he's pruning, he's bleeding out everything that was getting in your way to give him his time. So now you have all the time that you need to really listen to what he is saying to you. You have all the time that you need to sow a seed into the children that you constantly neglected because you were too busy to give them their time. And then when kids grow up and they're crazy, you want to look crazy, like you don't understand why they turned out the way they did because you didn't pour into them. So now you have all the time that you need to be with your family. You have all the time that you need to save money and stop eating out. You have all the time that you need to purge your spiritual system of any pieces or any kind of fragmented pieces of glass that's keeping you from fully experiencing God. It's time. You've got it. You've got time now. You've got time to realign your home. You've got time to pour into your children. You have time to pour into your vision, to make it plain. You've got time to quiet your mind and still your position and still your frame and meditate on the presence of God. You've got time to write out that business plan in detail for everything that you want to manifest in your life. You got time to really pay attention to the strongholds that you have been running from through the frames of being social, through the frames of a boo, through the frames of your job. You've got all this time to align with the way that it's supposed to go. The original setting. When God showed me in the midst of that eclipse that it's done, and then I'm rolling out a new scroll, a new way of doing things. I'm going to get my children's attention. I'm going to allow things to enter into the environment like fire, like in the days of Sodom. I'm going to allow fire to come into the earth. And if I have to allow it to destroy those that are not in my will, then it will be done. But I believe in my heart and I believe in my soul and my spirit that God has chose a remnant. God is beginning to make his word flesh. God is pulling people out of the earth that doesn't look like you, don't dress like you, don't fit into a box. And he is beginning to wake them up in their consciousness, in the vibration of frequency, the spirit of love, which is him. To pull his people back, to reconcile people back to him. Because some of us depend too much on leaders in the church, leaders in our community, leaders in the job to spoon feed us the presence of God. But in the times of, it wasn't anyone to spoon feed Abraham. It wasn't anyone to spoon feed Moses. You had to get into a high place on the peak of a mountain to enter into the frequency, the Spirit of God. You had to come before him in the glory of fasting and praying and really seeking the way that he wants you to live your life. So he had to allow a pandemic to come into the earth so that you could get the 2020 vision that you was professing and affirming at the beginning. It was blurred, but in order for the vision to be clear, things had to happen to do a spiritual demolition in the earth. To reveal the true church, the true people of God that are not barricaded between the walls of a church, but that he is drawn out of the earth to reconcile people back to him. A true army of God is what is being revealed in this time, the last days in this time. So I want you to know that if you feel terrified, that it's okay. It's an emotion. You don't need to judge it. It just is what it is. Rest in it. But I also want you to know that when the dust settles, the old you will be dead, and you will emerge from the ashes a new you. I love you guys. Subscribe and click that bell so that you can rise with me. Peace. Bye now.